Hello, folks. Welcome to our weekly chat. This week, a great question had come to me, not directly about history, but why I have Wizard of Oz figurines behind me and things on the wall, and I just thought it would be neat to answer that question. One of the reasons I do is because I like the Wizard of Oz. There's a whole history to that story, about its connection to political history, and you can Google that. But the Scarecrow allegedly represents farmers, the Tin Man, industrial workers, the Cowardly Lion, Williams Jennings Bryan, and the Wizard of Oz, the President of the United States at the time, and Emerald City representing money, and the Golden Road, the gold standard, and actually Judy Garland's shoes in the movie were ruby slippers, but in the actual original book, the original story by L. Frank Baum, they were silver slippers. So silver, gold standard, and then the Emerald City represents green money. The debate over the gold standard, silver standard at the time. But that's something that's a deep dive into that story, and I love that. I love that history and reading about that. But East Aurora's connection, there is a connection to the Wizard of Oz and East Aurora, and that is through a man named W. Denslow, William Wallace Denslow, actually. And I included him in my book, Legendary Locals of East Aurora, and he's inside there. Oops, that's Alibaba. Alibaba, William W. Denslow is over here. Alibaba's here. Um, and I'll post a picture of him in the comments. But he is not only legendary here in East Aurora, but quite eccentric. And Albert Hubbard, it's no surprise that Albert Hubbard was the reason that W. Denslow came to East Aurora. Um, Albert Hubbard brought a lot of artistic, eccentric people, but this guy's very intriguing and very interesting, and hence why I included him in my book. And a lot of folks may have heard of him, but may not have known the connection that he has here to our friends here, or to the Roycroft in East Aurora, and to things that we see today. So W. Denslow came to East Aurora, was an artist and illustrator on the Roycroft campus, and actually a lot of the pictures, the things that you see um, uh, regarding Roycroft illustrations, namely the seahorse. There are a lot of the illustration of the seahorse is included in a lot of illustrations in magazines, but it's also included in iron and copper, and it's been included in other designs of things. So that seahorse trademark of Denslow's essentially has become quite popular, had become quite popular. And a lot of the imagery that's associated with Roycroft in the Roycroft illustrated books and things can be attributed to W. Denslow. So even after he left the Roycroft, that look, so to speak, continued on, and the coloring and things like that. So you'll see a lot of similarities between Roycroft illustrations and in books at the time, specifically contemporary of that time period. There's things that came along later that were inspired, and we sort of have an arts and crafts feel, but original arts and crafts look, there's a it's uncanny similar look between that and illustrations of the wonderful Wizard of Oz books. And there were more than just the Wizard of Oz books. There were several books. Of course, the Wizard of Oz gets all the attention because it was made into a movie, and then a lot of takeoffs and plays like that. But the books themselves, the illustrations, there's a lot of crossover. So W. Denslow was an illustrator here in East Aurora, and he was known by what they described his voice as a foghorn voice, that he had this deep voice, this mustache that someone described as a walrus mustache. And he left the Roycroft in 1899, and so he had worked here, and like a lot of artists, he maybe outgrew the Roycroft, or in some cases, very strong personalities, which W. Denslow would have been a very strong personality, eventually did not get along with Albert Hubbard. Not to say that that was the case here, but I the point was sometimes that the Roycroft would have been a starting point, and as your career got to a certain point, and a lot of artists were noticed and they were lured by someplace else, that they would move on, and that was seen as okay, and that's what happened here with him. So he went on and again had this not only signature art style, but also a signature voice, and he was just a character. So he goes on and he works with L. Frank Baum of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and he illustrates the books. And what's important about this is the books are important, but the imagery that we see from the movie, in Broadway musicals, even of the Wiz, that was taken from the Wizard of Oz, um, and Wicked. So a lot of the Broadway things that all come from an imagery that was created by W. Denslow, a man who lived here in East Aurora and who had his early career here in East Aurora and developed that style. So what you see even on Broadway stages today in Wicked or the movie of The Wizard of Oz, those came from W. Denslow, which is kind of interesting. And he started his career in East Aurora. So he moves away, and he is the illustrator for the Wonderful Wizard of Oz books, and he makes a lot of money doing so. And one of the interesting things about him is he wasn't very good with money. Well, it's, I guess, how you look at it. He, with that money that he earned from the Wizard of Oz, among other things, he bought himself an island, and he called it Denslow Island, off the coast of Bermuda. So he named the island after himself, which he can do. It's his island. But what's even more eccentric and more interesting, that in addition to naming the island Denslow Island, he proclaimed himself King Denslow the First of Denslow Island. Now, I don't know if he expected a King Denslow II to come along later, but King Denslow I of Denslow Island, he gave himself a title, and apparently he could do that because it was his island. That gives you just a sense of how eccentric he was and how fun he was. But to name an island, I kind of joke, well, if I owned an island, I might name myself the king of it as well. So that just gives you an idea of his eccentricities. He was married and divorced 3 times, and he was one of those artists who was very creative and very good at what he did. But unfortunately, he struggled with mental issues throughout his life, and he actually was an alcoholic, and he had a big drinking problem. And after the fame of The Wizard of Oz, he couldn't find work, and so he went into depression about that, and he was unemployed for a long time. So he struggled with unemployment. So yes, he could not replicate the fame of The Wizard of Oz, and when that was over with, he struggled with money and with drinking. So much so that when he did get a job, Life magazine actually purchased one of his illustrations for a full color cover in the spring of 1915. So he had been trying to get work in Life magazine, really big deal at the time. Not only is it a good thing for his career, to maybe get his career started again, but also money. He needed money. And so that was a big deal for him, so much of a big deal that he took when he got that news, he went out and celebrated, and he drank too much. And as a result of that, he caught pneumonia and died. Apparently, from the news accounts, that he died as a result of the drinking, which led to pneumonia, because he didn't take care of himself, and died. And interestingly, he died in March of 1915, just a little more than a month before Albert Hubbard died on the Lusitania. And so they died around the same time. So when anyone asks you the connection of East Aurora to the Wizard of Oz, That's the one I know of. There may be others. I don't think Judy Garland ever came to East Aurora, but I'd be open to other ideas, other history stories about any other connections to the Wizard of Oz. Um, this connection to W. W. Denslow was highlighted a couple years ago when the high school did The Wizard of Oz. And quite interesting story. The audience could know that. And then before that, several years, going on lots of years now, as we did The Wizard of Oz at East Aurora High School, the director actually had connections to cast members who played the Munchkins, and that's actually one of the pictures I have up on the wall here is when I got to meet two of the actors who played the Munchkins, and they autographed, and they came to East Aurora, and they had a signing, and it was interesting to meet them. No longer with us. I don't believe any cast members from the 1939 movie are with us anymore. So if anyone asks you about East Aurora's connection to The Wizard of Oz, you tell them you know about W. W. Denslow, the interesting illustrator who gave us the imagery that we still see today in not only the Wizard of Oz books, the movie, and everything that has followed. His work was inspiration for all of it. So what the imagery we see in the characters is partly L. Frank Baum, but really the illustrator, and that was W. W. Denslow, who had a very interesting life. So thanks for joining us today. Again, I'm going to keep these quick. I want you to bring your questions to me that you have about East Aurora, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. If there's a topic you want to talk about, I'd love to talk about it. Someone did bring up the trouble we're having with the daylight saving time and changing over, and how hard it is. I've already talked about that. So if you can just search in the search area of this page and look for daylight saving time. I talked all about my feelings on it and the history of it back in the fall when we switched when we fell back. So there's an interesting history there, not only nationwide but how it affected East Aurora. It's tough. Daylight savings time is a tricky thing, but my argument is that if we didn't do it, it would be worse. So go watch that live stream that we talked about back in the fall. Thank you, David, for that question. You want to know more about the history of the Roycroft Chapel and the vault downstairs. I will answer that coming up soon. That's a great suggestion. I actually worked in that building when Town Hall was there, and I know a couple things about the bank at the Roycroft campus. So I'll give you that as a clue as to why there was a vault down there, perhaps. All right, thanks for joining me. And again, leave your comments. And if you are interested in what you see, feel free to share. And if you don't like or follow this page, what are you waiting for? Do it. And you can keep up on all the videos that are occurring and happening either live or later. All right, take care. Have a great day.